When we got the call, luckily, to take on the farm, because we had no equity and no assets, we started by rolling in to contract rearing. And we said, well, we're good at this, but we want to do it for ourselves. So we did that for a winter, and we used the money to roll into getting to our own stock and getting more sheep about. And then from there, we just tried to grow and grow. And I think at the same time, we want to be able to keep growing, but at a sustainable level where we can still farm responsibly and get to the right markets for the produce.
Livestock farming in the UK in general, I think, is a big misconception. Most of the produce is reared like this. It's outdoors. It's with nature. It's encouraging biodiversity. It's sequestering carbon. It's improving soil health. I think people often look at the animal as a unit, and they'll look at, okay, what's that eaten? How much methane does that produce? What's the miles to get that to the slaughterhouse, then to my shop, then to my door? But they forget where that animal is. They forget that it's grazed on permanent pasture, which is the biggest sequester of carbon that's actually out there known. They forget about the biodiversity and the hedgerows, the waterways, the living environment around it, and what's gone in to support that produce. That all of the really good stuff about British agriculture is never accounted for. We pull our farming systems back to use low inputs, to do it as a grass-based system, to keep the costs as low as we possibly can, whilst also outputting really high quality meat. Supermarkets typically will sell more smaller joints, and that's not often when the animal is peaked in terms of its optimum quality. So typical carcass weight for that market is, it can be as low as 16 kilos, can be about 21 kilos as optimum. When our animals go through this process, their dead weight is typically 25 to 27 kilos. They're a much rounder, fuller carcass that's got there naturally, and it's a better product.
And that is almost purely down to age, and it'll be purely down to then feeding on the grass.
It's the way it's grown and the age of the animal. If it's an older animal and it's been allowed to mature and get to its optimum stage on its own off grass, it is a much superior product.
I think a fair price of British produce is the hardest thing that British farmers struggle with, because we're having to compete with international trade, and they don't have the same standards of raising that animal and animal welfare that we have in Britain. They can have feedlots, they can have intensely farmed factories, and they can import it and they can sell it in Britain, no problem. But the British farmer, there's certain standards we have to meet, which still are pretty minimal, I would say, in terms of what you should be doing as a farmer, but they're leaps and bounds above the rest of the world. And yet the price benefit we see for having that better quality is not there. We need access to a market which places value on how your food has been produced and where it has come from.
It just happens to be that by valuing those elements, you get a far better tasting product at the same time.
Yeah, that is purely
such
just
a lovely
how it
bonus,
works.
isn't it?